Hello, everyone. It's Robert Holmes again, and I'm the author of One Fish Changes Everything, and I have a good friend here with me today, a special friend, Mr. Jim Oberhofer. Jim is a man of many talents, I can honestly say, does a number of things. He's an author. He is a crew chief on the world's fastest cars, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that, as well as a good father and a great man. So Jim is here to teach us a little bit about what he thinks about leadership. He's also taken on a recent venture, opening up a Victory Lane oil change in Texas. So leading a team there and starting a franchise. He's got a lot of things going on, a lot of things happening, and we're excited to catch up with him. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me, Robert. Glad to be here.
You bet. You bet. So you just coming back from Indy. How was Indy?
Indy's Indy. For us in the drag racing world, the U.S. Nationals, that's like our Indy 500 or Daytona 500, and it usually isn't very good to me. So we struggled a little bit, but, we qualified for the race. And, the thing about it is when you go to one of those races and you struggle a little bit, no matter what race it is, as long as you come away learning something and feeling like you're going in the right direction, it's a good thing. So at least I feel like when we left there, even though we lost first round, we had a good running car up until it spun the tires about 300 feet. But I felt like we made some major progress. First round. So that was good.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a great sign of a leader right there, Jimmo. When you know that as competitive as you are, you know that the real winning there is the learning, right?
Yeah, and I've always felt in my position in the drag racing world, the day that I wake up, and if I ever say, I know everything about what it takes to run a top fuel dragster or nitro funny car, is the day I probably should stay home. And I always kind of go back to my old boss, Connie Coletta, who he's been racing longer than most people have been alive. I've always said he's probably forgotten more than most people know about a nitro engine. And, there's times where he says, I don't know. Let's go find out. And so to hear somebody with that kind of experience, that kind of knowledge, who could sit there and say, I don't know, let's go find out what the answer is to this question that we have. And I always thought that was like really cool, because I've been around enough people in my life in the drag racing world. They'll BS their way through something. Connie was definitely not one of those guys.
That's good. That's good. And again, that's just early on in the conversation here, two great signs of leadership, right? Learning posture for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. All right. So what we're going to do is set the stage and kind of get everybody to know a little bit about Jim Oberhofer. And I think what we'll do is kind of take us back to where you grew up and then tell us a little bit about your family, and then ultimately, your passions right now.
Well, I was born in Englewood, New Jersey, of all places. I used to try to tell people, not want to tell too many people I was from New Jersey, but I am from New Jersey, and there's nothing wrong with that. But lived there till I was almost 11 years old, and my mom and dad decided they wanted to move to Plano, Texas. And you talk about a big change for our family, because we had so much of our family up in that northern New Jersey area. And my dad, through his racing, because he was a drag racer way back when, and he came down to Dallas, Texas in the early 70s and checked it out, really liked it, and talked to my mom, and it just made sense for them to move down here. It was just more cost effective. We'd be able to get a house, which we didn't have a house up in New Jersey. We lived in a 4-room apartment with my brother and sister and I all sharing a bedroom. So It was pretty neat to be able to move down here. And at first I wasn't real sure about it, but I grew to love Plano, Texas. And, graduated from high school here in 1984, Plano Senior High. Of course, they're huge into high school football down here. And believe it or not, back then I just wasn't big enough to to do anything out there on the football field with those guys. But enjoyed my time in Plano. But when I was 21 years old, I moved up to Ypsilanti, Michigan, and went to work for Connie and Scott Coletta on their drag race team, and I spent 31 years there. And probably some of the best years of my life. Met my future wife Tammy there, and through there we had a daughter, my daughter Ashley, who's now 25 years old, and just really enjoying myself. But it was, as they say, all good things come to an end. So I made a change in my life, parted ways with the Coletta team. I wanted to embark on starting my own business later in life. And I still wanted to go race, but I didn't want to race the way I was racing. I wanted to take on owning my own business. I wanted to move back to Texas because I wanted to spend time with my mom and dad while I still could. And so I'm glad I'm back here. I've been back here in Texas now for about a year and a half, full time. And, I started my own business, Victory Lane Quick Oil Change. We opened the doors last October 23rd, and picked a great time to get into business. I tell you, when we first opened the doors, all of a sudden, magically, the Parker Road out in front of our shop, they decided to tear that road up for 3 months.
Oh, no.
And so that slowed things down and was pretty frustrating. And then about the time that was all done, and you think there's a little bit of like light at the end of the tunnel, well, then COVID-19 hit. And so we've been dealing with that since then. But, things are looking up. They're getting better and better each day. And, I still get to go race. I'm crew chief on my good friend Paul Lee. He has a nitro funny car, and he allows me to come in on the weekends and tune it. I have a great team of people behind me that allow me to do that, to where I can just fly in and tune the car. And I'm kind of having my cake and eating it too, as I can tell by my waistline these days.
No, that's good, Jimmo. That's really good. I can't believe it's been a year and a half already. I mean, it seems like you just jumped down there. Time's moving fast.
I enjoyed the winter time. It wasn't nowhere near as cold. I think we turned the heat on in our shop like 3 times.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool.
Nice. That's very cool. Very cool. All right, so let's do the rewind game. This is something I do with everybody, and I'm going to rewind back to a year, and I just want you to tell me what you were doing that year. What was happening in your life at that time, and we're going to go back to the year that I graduated high school, which is 1989. Way back to 1989.
1989, man, that was a pretty good year for me. It was my second year with the Coletta team, and I remember back then we always wondered, like, are we ever going to win a race, right? And I worked on Scott Coletta's funny car, and it was myself and Scott and gentleman by the name of Randy Green. We all worked on this car. And, Connie back then, Connie raced hard no matter what. But it was just different back then. And, when we pulled into the track, not many people thought much of our team or thought much that we were going to be a threat to win a race. We looked at having like, it was a great weekend if we went out and qualified and maybe won first round, which wasn't too often.
Wow.
And but that year we won our first race with Scott, in Scott Coletta's funny car. Scott won his very first race at the Houston Raceway Park, and it was just one of those, where they said, like hell's gonna freeze over before you guys ever win. Well, the weekend before in Houston, the race got canceled on. I think it was canceled on Sunday because it actually started flurrying there. It was snowing in Houston, so they canceled this race and postponed it till the following weekend. And then we went on and won that race, and we said, man, it actually took hell to freeze over. Because who would have ever thought it would have would have snowed in Houston, Texas at that time. But yeah, we went out and won that race, and it was such a great accomplishment for such uh, a team like ours, because we were going up against so many great teams back then. Kenny Bernstein's Budweiser King team, Don Perdome, Skull Bandit, Bruce Larson, who ended up winning the championship that year. There's so many great funny cars. Ed Ace McCullough, John Force, back before he was John Force, he was still very tough back then, and it was just neat, to be able to go out and win that race. And it was one of those days. That was the day that I realized that it's better to be lucky than good, and because we had a lot of luck that day, and we won the race. And we were way more lucky than we were good. So that was a great year, 1989. And plus, the end of that year is when I met, which would be my future wife, Tammy. And so it was good. It was a good year. I really enjoyed it. And back then you look at things like you're wondering, like, what am I doing, right? And but I look back at those times, and I just had a great time racing with Scott, racing with Randy, and it was just a fun time, in my life. That it's one of those things at the time you don't really appreciate it as much, but as I look back on it, I definitely appreciate it a lot more now.
Yeah, isn't that true? I mean, that is that goes to say for a lot of things. Not only rewinding back in your life and seeing those moments that maybe you didn't recognize were so special at the time, but for me, the culture that I grew up in, my hometown, right? Now that I've been away from my hometown for nearly 20 years, I really recognize how special that place is that I grew up, right? And so I think there's that reflection. You get to a certain point where you start reflecting more and you start appreciating the things that maybe you didn't appreciate before.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I met I didn't meet. One of my early customers I had when I opened my store up here was a guy came in with his son and was, working on, wanting to get an oil change for his son, was going to drop the car off. So anyway, I'm getting some information from him, and the dad's talking, and he says his name, and I go, "Are you Coach Lanningham?" And he starts laughing. He goes, well, yeah, I am. I haven't heard that in a while. He goes, and who are you? I said, well, I'm Jim Oberhofer. You used to be one of my coaches, back in 9th and 10th grade over at Clark High School. So we started talking, and his son just got a kick out of everything we were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And back then in Texas, if you were bad, when I played football, we have to take around these progress reports, right? And if you got anything less than an S, if you got an S- or a U on your grade or your attitude in class, you get a SWAT. And so I brought mine in one time, and I had, let's just say I had 3 bad marks on my progress report. And old Coach Lanningham, and Coach Lanningham wasn't the biggest coach, because we had some big coaches. And I'm like, oh, okay, Coach Lanningham's going to swat me. It won't be that bad. I'm telling you what, he swatted harder than anybody. I told his son, I said, I think my rear end's still red from those swats. But,
That's funny.
But we've developed this, great friendship since then. And I really look back, and I really missed a great opportunity on having him as my coach. I didn't take things serious enough back then, when I was playing football. And Coach Lanningham was more than just a coach. I mean, he went on to be the principal at Plano West Senior High here, which is pretty strong, and just an absolutely fantastic guy. And I wish, if I can ever say anything to a lot of our young people that are out there now, is there's opportunities that present themselves to you sometimes when you're young and you don't know. And this was one of those opportunities that if I had to do it all over again, I would definitely take advantage of having Coach Lanningham as my coach, because I think he could have because he made an impact on my life. He could have made an even bigger impact on my life. That's something that's pretty cool, I think.
It is cool, and I agree with you completely. And I see it in my boys, that they tend to shy away from older individuals. And I don't know why, but when I was young, I had lots of mentors around me. I had, I've told the story a couple times. My neighbor across the street, Jack Schaefer, was the mayor of our hometown, and for some reason, he and I were like best friends. We'd fish together 2 times a week, and I would clean his pool for him, and we'd come back home fishing, and we'd sit behind his house and clean fish for a couple hours. He's such a great guy, and he took a liking to me. I took a liking to him, and he became a tremendous mentor in my life. Of course, you don't recognize it at the time, right? You just kind of think of it as somebody I'm fishing with. Right. When I look back and I think of all the things that he taught me, it's just incredible. And so I think there's those times where I see it with my boys with a little bit older, younger kids, like some college students. Both my boys have been active in young life, right? And so I think that's the case. But I very rarely see young people really connecting with old people like I did. And I think it might have been rare for me as well. I don't know, but I certainly was blessed from that standpoint.
Yeah.
So, all right. So with that said, mentors, I'm sure you've got a bunch of mentors in your life, Connie being one, I'm sure. Give me some names that have really done some things to steer you and get you to where you are.
Well, obviously Connie is one of them, and I would almost put the entire Coletta family in there. Connie, Scott, and Doug, have been tremendous mentors to me over the years. On the racing side of things, there's 2 other gentlemen, Dick LaHaye and Andy Ace McCullough. Both of those guys taught me a lot. Dick LaHaye, that guy was simply amazing because he came to work at Coletta Motorsports, and nobody thought that would last. And I think, I don't know, like 13 or 14 race wins later, and a couple championships for Scott, a couple second place finishes. He did some amazing things, and he taught myself, he taught my brother and a number of other people, and Scott and Connie for that matter, how to race a little bit better. I should say how to race a lot better than what we were doing before, because we went from being a team, like I said, that nobody thought much of, to all of a sudden we'd show up at a race with Scott's car, and I would have to say between the years of 1993 and 1996, we were probably one of the most feared top fuel dragsters out there. Ed McCullough, he's a guy, he gave me like my next level, so he put put some trust in me on my abilities that I had. He let me expand my knowledge on a race car. And Ace was just a, fabulous guy to work with and work for. Both Dick LaHaye and Ed McCullough were just fantastic people in my life. On the business side of things, there's a couple of people out there that, once again, Connie Coletta is a huge influence on me for business and stuff. But, there's people that I met through the relationships I built in drag racing. And, a lot of it goes, people I met at Mac Tools. John Aiden was a big influence on me. Roger Spee, who I'm still close with and talk to all the time. Tony Merritt, as we all know.
Tony.
And, Brett Shaw. Brett Shaw, I would say Brett Shaw was like, he was like really awesome with me. And I've had some great conversations with him about my business. In fact, he came here the other day, and we went out and had lunch. And of course, you know how his mind works, Robert. He starts looking around like, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. So he's been a great guy for me, as well as yourself, Robert. You've been a big influence on me as well. And so I've had these people in my life, and I've had some other great people, Paul Lee's fast becoming one of a huge business mentor to me, and as well as my good old buddy Cowboy Bob. He's just a mentor, period.
How's he doing? I haven't seen him in a long time.
He's doing good. He actually came to this race this past weekend, and it was great to see him. And I'm very blessed to have him as my brother, in my life. And then, you're always going to have your family as your mentors as well. And my mother and father were, they did so many great things for us kids, my brother and sister and I, that we, probably took for granted at the time, being as hard as it was to raise a family back then. But, we always had a bed to sleep in. We always had a roof over our house. We always, had food in our stomachs and things like that. So I was very fortunate, to have them in my life. And I've got great family in my life, all of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. I've got such an awesome family all the way around that really, I feel very fortunate to have that. And then my daughter is absolutely the greatest thing in my life. And, with her, she's, now has her bachelor's degree in business management, and she's a pretty amazing young lady. And my late wife, Tammy, and I, I give Tammy all the credit for raising this kid to being as smart as she is. Because back then, I was gone a lot. I was gone on the road a lot, and I missed a lot. And Tammy took care of business, and she was absolutely just an amazing woman. I can't call her a mentor. I could just call her just a pure badass. She was awesome.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Let's talk a little bit about that. How long has it been? When did you write your book? When was that?
Came out the end of 2015.
2015. So it's been a while. Top Fuel for Life, right? And
Yep.
And so Jimmo's written a great book that if you get a chance, read it. Certainly his life and the things that are outlined in the book are certainly inspiring, at the same time challenging, and I'm certain that that was probably challenging for you to write and reflect and put together. But tell us a little bit about that, and so as the people who are watching can reach out there and grab a copy and be inspired by what you've done.
I lost my wife, Tammy, in June of 2013. She had gotten stage 4 metastatic lung cancer back in, diagnosed with it in April of 2012. So through this whole experience, it was, I really didn't know what I was doing. As a spouse, as a partner with Tammy, and this is Tammy to a T. She did everything she could to protect me and protect my daughter from knowing what was really happening. And, so it kind of made me unaware of a lot of things that were going on. And I should have known better. But, my ignorance, got in the way of what was doing the right things. So, my wife, Tammy, she passes away in June of 2013. And after the race season, I was sitting down with a couple of friends of mine, and we were talking about things. I was talking about, some of the things that happened towards the end of Tammy's life, because the last 6 months of her life, that was probably some of the best times I ever spent with her. And it was just because there was so much to learn there about life and what's right, and looking at and seeing every day what she was going through and the challenges that she was going through, and how strong of a woman she was. And so I would talk about these experiences. One of them was her going, and we were in Niagara Falls, and she's in a wheelchair, and I'm pushing her around, and she wanted some ice cream, and she went up and got this ice cream. We went to a Haagen-Dazs, and she's looking over, and she picks out some cookies and cream ice cream, and it was just this little scoop of ice cream put the biggest smile on her face. And I'm thinking at the time, I'm like, wow. I go, she's going through chemo and radiation and pain pills, all these things, and none of those things could put a smile on her face, but this little bitty scoop of ice cream, like, was magic. And it was so simple. And at that point, I'm like, wow, that's pretty simple. And I would talk about these stories with my friends, and they're like, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I'm like, no, why would I write a book? They're like, well, we think you have some great stories to tell, and there's a lot of great advice you can give to people. I said, well, I don't know anything about writing a book. I go to you guys, and they're like, no, but we can find somebody who does. So they started working on that, and hooked me up with a lady named Jackie Camacho, and next thing you know, this is really happening. I'm like, oh man, we're really writing this book, So it was a pretty neat process. It was about 22 months from start to finish to get it done, and I was pretty worried when I first finished it, and the first copy was shipped to my house to proofread and stuff, and my daughter read it to me, and or no, she didn't read it to me. I gave it to her. She goes, "Hey, Pops, can I read, that book?" And I said, "Yeah." I go, "You want to read it?" And she goes, "Yeah, I want to read it." So this was at like 10 o'clock at night. Well, I went to bed. I got up the next morning, and the book was there. And Ashley came down. I said, "Did you get a chance to look at that book?" And she goes, "Yeah, I read the whole thing last night." I go, "What?" She says, "Yeah, I read the whole thing." I go, "Well, what'd you think?" She goes, "It was really good. I thought it was really well done." So then the next thing I asked her was like, okay, was there any misspellings or mispunctuations? Because Tammy and my daughter Ashley, they could find a typo anywhere. We'd go to restaurants, they'd find typos in menus. And so she goes, "You did pretty good, Pops." She goes, "There's a couple places in there you should have used an Oxford comma." I go, "What the hell's an Oxford comma?" Right? so she told me what it was. So then I told my ghostwriter, and then I told the editor, because the ghostwriter, her husband was one of the editors. He was an editor of a big newspaper back in Chicago. Then we had another editor, and I'm like, and I kept telling him, "Man, this thing has got to be, we can't have typos in it. We can't have anything, because she will pick it apart," right? And so I brought up this Oxford comma thing, and they're like, "Well, yeah, she does have a point, but that's more on the English side. The American side, it's okay." And I'm like, "Yeah, but she picks it out." But I was pretty pleased, that we made it through kind of unscathed for the most part, without her tearing me apart too much. This is wrong, that's wrong, because she would let me know for sure.
That's good. That's good. The first reader is always a nerve-wracking thing for sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was pleased afterwards when she liked it. I didn't care if anybody else liked it.
Yeah, that's
and
good.
that was, after that, I was pretty happy, and I was happy afterwards that a lot of people that read it, they enjoyed the book, and it made some, it mattered to them, or it would help them out of a situation or whatever it may be. There were some people that were disappointed because they thought I was going to teach them how to run a top fuel dragster. Oh, not in this book.
That's funny. Oh, that's funny. All right, so let's jump here and go to leadership, right? You've obviously had, you mentioned it, lots of mentors and folks that you call strong leaders in your life. What do you think makes a great leader?
In my opinion, a great leader is somebody who listens. You've got to be able to listen to what other people have to say, and then you have to be able to, pick out, what it is. If it does make sense, then great. If it doesn't make sense, then that's fine too. I've always tried to feel like I felt like I'm a good listener to people. I like to hear what they have to say, because you learn from everybody, and you can learn, like I can learn in my oil change business here from an entry level employee. Just like when I was on the race car team, with Connie and Scott and Doug, you can learn from the guy who you just hired 2 weeks ago. And everybody has something that they can bring to the table that can help make you a better person. And so I've always tried to pride myself on being able to listen to what people have to say. And, and then the other thing is trying not to focus on the bad in people or the things that they struggle with. I'm a believer in looking at what's good about somebody and focusing on what's good about somebody and trying to work with that, because we're all not perfect.
Mm.
And there's sometimes out there, in the racing world, there might be a guy who he can do the cylinder heads on a race car better than anybody out there. But let's just say you started him out on the clutch and he's not very good. And if you can't figure that out, like early on, like, okay, maybe this clutch job isn't for him, but something tells me that he can be really good on the cylinder heads, and you put him over there. But a lot of people out there, they'll just, well, he's no good over here, he can't be good anywhere else, and they'll part ways with that person. So I try to look at what's good about somebody and focus on what's good about them, and not focus on what's bad about them. I focus on what they can't do, or what they can do, not what they can't do.
Yeah.
And, and I believe that, those things there, listening and looking at people and seeing what their strong points are and focusing on those strong points, that's ultimately going to make your team better. Because no matter what it is, whether it's a drag racing team or it's a team in a quick lube shop or it's a team in a sports team or a business or whatever it may be, if you're the leader of something, you need your team like marching in the same, the same direction. And, if you've got people going here and here and everywhere, you're never going to be successful. And, so that's one thing I really try to believe is, as a leader, you're focusing, you've got a vision of what you think something's going to be like, and you try to get everybody to believe in your vision and believe in your way of doing it. But if somebody might have a better idea that can help achieve that vision much sooner, then you've got to be able to listen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm a believer in people. That sometimes that doesn't work out the best for me, but I believe in people a lot, and I might get criticized for that every now and then, but that's something that I'm always going to be that way. And there's many of times out there where if you listen to somebody right off the bat that says, oh, you should get rid of that person or get rid of that person, well, pretty soon you've got nobody left.
That's right. That's right.
So you just work hard at building relationships with people, and as a leader, get them to believe in what you believe in. And I don't think it's that difficult, but I think a lot of people are impatient. That's one thing I've seen about this world lately, especially being in business, is people are just impatient about everything. They want instant results. They want, the old days of, like, I look at a guy like Chuck Noll that was hired by the Steelers back in the late 60s. And, his first year as coach, he was, I believe, 1-13. Winning 4 Super Bowls with the Steelers. Tom Landry, same guy. And back, organizations like the old Dallas Cowboys, they had patience, and it paid off for them in the long run. And then Pittsburgh Steelers, same way, they had patience, and it paid off for them in the long run. And that's what I try to believe I have. But this day and age, it's tough because people they want instant results, and they don't want to wait on building anything.
No, I agree, and I say oftentimes that I think technology has done this to us, and I think that we are so used to pushing a button and getting a response that we're looking for that, whether we realize it or not. We're looking for that in every aspect of our lives, right? And so either in business or in relationships or anything, we're looking for the immediate. I do this and I get this, and that's just not the way it works. It's not the way it works. And I'm fearful, you and I growing up, we got to see this technology, really become robust, right? It wasn't there when we were in 1989, right? It was just beginning. But I would look at my kids and I wonder what in the world, right, is it going to be like for them? Because ultimately they want something immediately, a whole different mindset, for sure. All right. Good stuff. All right. So I'm going to say, talking about kids, and you mentioned earlier something that was good advice for young people. I do hope that some young people come and watch this and have, inspiration to be inspired. If there's some young people watching this show and you're going to share it and other people are going to see it and we're going to get some young people that can be influenced, what do you think the most important thing you can say to them is?
For a young person, and it goes back to being if you're a leader, that listening part is so huge for people, young and old. And our younger generation right now, I think it's important for them to listen to. And I'm speaking about me here, an older generation now, which I never thought I would say that, but I am. There's a lot to learn from people. And if you're, 18, 19, 20, 21, I remember when I was that age, I thought I knew everything. And in reality, I knew nothing. And, so I was fortunate that I was able to listen and learn from people that were, 15, 20 years older than me back then. And they helped me with my life and guided me in a direction that I'm happy that I'm in right now. So the younger people, the biggest thing is just listening. You don't have to do everything that the older generation says is right or whatever, but you need to learn from the experiences that we had. And I've been able to do that here in my Quick Lube. I've got 4 kids here. They're all, 19 years old, give or take, a few months. And, they're good kids, they're solid kids, and they want to be mechanics when they get older, but they have so much to learn. And it's not necessarily about working on cars or anything like that, because that'll just come with time as well.
Yeah.
But, like my general manager that I have here, Guy Tipton, he's 73 years old or 74 years old. I forgot, he just had a birthday, but he has a wealth of experience. I'm working on cars. And he's raced out there. You know, he's worked for a lot of great teams over the years in the drag racing business. He still dabbles in the nostalgia racing business, but he's been a great asset to have here, and he's great for these young kids. I said, Guy may not be able to like blow through a computer like some of the younger kids, but he has a lot of common sense. And I remember Dick LaHaye used to tell us, like, common sense will get you further in this world than anything else. If you have common sense, you will do better than somebody who doesn't have common sense. So, you know, I believe that, you know, for these young people to be able to listen and learn, you know, from the older generation, even people if it's 10 years older, you learn from people's experiences, you know, and learn from others' mistakes. And if they're trying to help you because they're like, hey, I've made this mistake before, listen to them. Don't blow them off. And I think that happens a lot, you know, and I see a lot of young kids these days who they've got the problem with the I knows. I know. They know everything. And I'm like, well, if you know this, why are you asking me? You know, somebody will come and ask me something, and then they'll say, oh, I know. Well, if you know, why are you asking me? You know, so I think it's definitely, I look back and I'm like, I apologize. I remember I apologized to Dick LaHaye a long time ago. I said, I'm sorry. He goes, for what? He says, you had to put up with me when I was like, you know, mid-20s and stuff, and I acted like I knew everything. I really didn't know crap, you know. And so and he just started laughing. He goes, that's part of it, man. He says, at least you learned. He says, if you would have just like kept your ears shut, then you never would have made it. He says, but your ears were open and you listened. And that's why you're where you're at. So
yeah, that's good. And you're right. It's a big part of it. All right, so we close this thing with 3 questions, Jimmo. Same 3 questions every time for everybody. Number 1 is, what do you think makes a great leader? We went through this a little bit already, but what do you think makes a great leader? You said listening, and what was the other one? Listening.
Listening and looking at the good and
looking at the good in people. Is there anything else?
Well, I you know, I mean, obviously, I'm pretty passionate about those 2 answers, and the other thing is, you know, is believing in yourself and believing in what your vision is about something. Because, you know, if you go into a project and you don't have that confidence or belief that your vision is going to just be the greatest thing ever, well, then your vision's probably going to fail.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. All right. The second question is, who is the best leader in history? There's a lot to choose from.
The best leader in history. Well, you know, I'm going to go back in time, and my thoughts are, especially with the craziness that's going on in this country right now, I'm looking at like somebody like George Washington. You know, we all tend to take things for granted and our freedom for granted, but I look at him, and I've been reading about him a lot lately, and he was quite the leader, in my opinion, and our country wouldn't be where it was at if it wasn't for his leadership through this country trying to get started and get on its feet. And you know, I think he by far is probably one of the greatest leaders in history, because without his leadership and his vision and everything else that he had, you and I might not be sitting here talking the way we are. You know, so I think he's a tremendous, very important leader in our history.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good one. All right, so when it's all said and done, Jimmo, and it's time for you to move on, what do you want people to say about you?
Well, I think what I'd like for people to say about me is just that, here was somebody that did what he said he was going to do. He didn't BS people. He was always helpful, and he always had people's backs. And that's something that I hope that I've heard that said about me a few times, and I hope that's still true years down the road. But I've always felt like I've put others in front of myself, which sometimes is not the best thing to do, because sometimes you've got to take care of yourself. But I enjoy trying to take care of others, and I enjoy having other people's backs, because not all the time people need to have somebody that's behind them. And I've done that a lot over my life, whether it's when I was working at Coletta's or whatever I'm doing right now, is I try to back people up. And because if I believe that they're doing something right, or that there's something good there in what they're doing, I'm going to back them up, whatever way I can. So, hopefully people will just say, hey, he was a good guy, had our back all the time, and he always did what he said he was going to do, and he was a positive person to be around. So
good. That's good. Well, I've been blessed, Jimmo, to be able to see your teams operate, and I will tell you that your leadership is clear. One of the things I used to always be amazed to watch your team work is that everyone knew the position, they knew the responsibility, knew exactly what they had to do to make that car run down the track. There was no questioning, there was no arguing at any time. I never saw any disruption at all. I'm sure there was, outside of the common eye, but from an outsider's viewpoint, your teams worked really well together, and that doesn't happen without good leadership. So I believe in you as a leader. I believe in what you do and how you do it. I'm always impressed by the things you get into. You're running a business, writing a book, running Top Fuel. You're a well-rounded breadth of knowledge that certainly is valuable to a lot of people in this world. So appreciate you, Jimmo. I'm so thankful you joined us today, and hopefully we'll get to do this again soon.
I appreciate it, Robert. It's always great talking with you, and my friendship with you means the world to me. So I appreciate it very much.
Likewise, my friend. We'll see you soon.
Take care.